الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
There are 6 articles of faith. They are very essential things which every Muslim believes in, and I'm going to be expounding those 6 articles of faith. So the first of them is belief in Allah. The second is belief in the angels. The third is belief in the messengers. And the fourth is believing in the books. The fifth is believing in the day of judgment, the final day, and all the events that take place afterwards, paradise, hellfire, and so on and so forth, the life after death. And the final one is the divine decree. So let's talk about the first one, believing in Allah. The first thing obviously is that one has to believe that God, the Creator, Allah, exists. Now, Allah is just the Arabic word for the God. Allah is not a different God. He is not a new God that was invented by the Prophet Muhammad. The pagan Arabs before the time of the Prophet Muhammad had a concept of the supreme divine being, as the Quran actually says, قُلْ مَا رَبُّ السَّمَاوَاتِ السَّبْعِ وَرَبُّ الْعَرْشِ الْعَظِيمِ سَيَقُولُ لِلَّهِ. Which means that if you say, Muhammad, if you ask them, who is the Lord of the 7 heavens, who is the Lord of the glorious throne, they will surely say Allah. They will surely say God. So they recognized that there was this supreme being. They never had an idol. They never had an image of Allah. They never had an image of God. So the concept was there of this being who created the heavens and the earth, who had power and control of all things, who sent down the rain, who caused the crops to grow, and who was not like anything in this creation. This is the universal belief we find amongst human beings. In fact, you find every culture in every age and every time has within it some concept of a supreme deity who is distinct and separate from the rest of the creation. So historically, believing in the existence of God is not something that human beings have really differed about. The idea that there is no God, or the actual belief that God does not exist, has been there in human history, but it's always been a small minority. Very few people have been able to accept such a rather absurd concept, because human reason, common sense, our very nature lends us almost inevitably, by looking and contemplating and observing the world around us, the universe around us, looking at ourselves, there are so many signs and indications that there is intelligence, wisdom, power, will behind the creation of the universe. So these signs are a kind of evidence that the Creator exists. Where we find organization, where we find things working according to laws and patterns, it's rational for us to conclude that there is an organizer, that there is one who has created these laws and created these patterns. But there is no need for us to ask the question, as some people do, well, who created the Creator? Because as the Quran tells us, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدُ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. This small chapter of the Quran very succinctly and powerfully explains the key concept of the oneness and the uniqueness of God. The surah is called Surah Al-Ikhlas, and it's translated, it says, Kul huwa Allahu ahad, say He is Allah, say He is God, ahad, the one. Ahad in Arabic means one and alone. So the word ahad negates any possibility of, for example, a trinity or a triune God or a pantheon of gods. God is one and alone. Allahu Samad means Allah is the one upon which and upon whom everything depends, whereas God himself is self-sufficient and needs nothing. Lam yulid, he is not born, wa lam yulad, nor does he give birth, so nor was he begotten. So no one gave birth to God, nor does God participate himself in the process of begetting, meaning God does not have children, God does not have sons, God does not have daughters. God is far removed from these things. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ, and there is nothing that can be likened unto him. So in reality, whatever you can imagine in your mind, God is not like that, because the only thing you can imagine in your mind is something based upon your experience as a human being of the world and the universe around you. Even fantastical and imaginary creatures that we can make up in our mind still ultimately are a combination of real existing things that we just put together perhaps in strange ways. But God is not like anything we can imagine. However, having said that, God the Creator does possess certain names and attributes and qualities. And these names and attributes and qualities are unique to him. Although we may, for example, see some pale reflection of those names and attributes within the creation. I will give you an example. The Quran tells us that God, the Creator, is the seeing and he is the hearing. Now, we also see and we also hear. But the seeing and the hearing of God is complete and perfect. He sees everything in every place and in every time, and seeing all of these things simultaneously does not confuse God in any way, shape or form. Similarly, hearing, we can only hear a few noises at a time. We can only certainly listen and concentrate to one person talking to us at a time. Whereas God can hear if every single human being and every creature called upon God, supplicated to God and asked God for something, God could hear all of those supplications, and all of those supplications would not confuse him in the least. Not only that, he could answer all of them, and that would be easy for God. So God is the possessor of unique special attributes. The greatest sin and the greatest crime that a human being can commit, as far as God is concerned, in the eyes of God, in the sight of God, is that we should ascribe partners to him. That we should make something in this limited, finite universe equal to God. And it doesn't mean that we need to say that this creature is actually God. No, it is sufficient for us to ascribe to a created being any single quality that is unique to God. So, for example, if we were to say, and we were to imagine that some human being could respond to our supplications and our prayers, then we would be ascribing to that human being a type of power and ability that only belongs to God. I mentioned already, for example, you see some people, they call upon saints, they call upon prophets, they supplicate to them, they call them, they make prayers to them. But if you think about it, if we have 1,000 human beings all praying to Jesus or Muhammad or Saint Anthony or any other human being or creature or Buddha or whoever it may be, if we had 1,000 of them calling to this person all at the same time, how would this human being be able to hear all of these discordant voices all at the same time and be able to make sense of them? That is not a capability that a human being has. And if you start saying that, no, the human being has this person, whether it's Jesus or a prophet or a saint or a holy person, whoever it may be, if you're saying that they have this ability, then what are you doing? You are now beginning to claim that they have the powers and they have the knowledge and they have the ability that only belongs to God. And this is the greatest lie against God, and the greatest distortion in respect to the reality of the limitations of His creation. So knowing and understanding what and who is the Creator, what are the qualities and the attributes of God, and what are the limitations of the creation, and being able to understand how you must separate God from the creation. This is in reality the very purpose of our existence, and this is the most important thing that God will judge us by before anything else on the Day of Judgment. There is a saying that the Prophet Muhammad mentioned, that on the Day of Judgment a man will stand in front of God, he will stand in front of Allah, and Allah will say to him, if you had the world and everything in it, would you ransom it now to save yourself from the hellfire? And this man will say, yes, my Lord, yes, my Lord. And Allah will say to him, I asked of you less than that. I only asked you that you should worship me and not associate anything as an equal with me. So this is what Allah is asking us for, that we should understand and comprehend and establish in our actions and our lives the reality of His oneness, and that we should eliminate the worship of everyone and everything other than Him. Now, part of the consequence of knowing that God is the possessor of these unique names, unique attributes, unique qualities, is that we worship Him, that we praise Him, that we direct certain acts of worship that are exclusive to God. They should only be done for the sake of God and only be done to God. Acts of worship, they must only be done for the sake of God. And this is where most human beings have gone wrong. Not that people believe or don't believe in the existence of a creator, provider, Lord, sustainer. Most people have accepted that. Where they have gone wrong is that they have either attributed to some created thing the powers and the knowledge of God, or they have given acts of worship that should only be for God to some created thing along with God. One of these very important things, for example, that Islam teaches us is that God is the one who defines for us what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is evil, what we should do, what we shouldn't do in terms of our life, the laws that we should live by personally and collectively. So the case is obviously in many situations that human beings have legislated in opposition to God's legislation. They have made rules through which and by which they run their own personal lives and their collective lives. But these rules are not in accordance with what God has revealed. Many times they may even contradict it. So if a person thinks that they have the ability or the right to make this legislation in opposition to God's legislation, then this is also a form of polytheism. This is a form of making something an equal with God. And finally, very importantly, there is another aspect of singling out Allah for worship that is not as serious as the ones we have previously mentioned, in that the ones we have previously mentioned, if a person does them, Allah has threatened them with eternal hellfire. In fact, He has said in the Quran that He will forgive any sin, but He will not forgive. If a person dies not repenting from making partners with Him, He will not forgive that person, and they will dwell in the hellfire forever. So it's very serious. But there is another type of associationalism or making something a partner with God, which is in your intentions. Now, we believe that when we do any action, we should try to do it sincerely to please God, not for some worldly benefit, not for some limited gain. But naturally, human beings, this is something that we struggle with. And having a pure intention is actually very, very difficult. And a Muslim is always striving to try to make their intention, the reason that they do things, purely and completely and sincerely for God. However, if a person falls short in that, then the person is not threatened with eternal hellfire. It is considered to be a serious transgression in respect to the rights that God, the rights that we should give to God. But it is not on the level as the things that we have mentioned previously. So this is what is called minor shirk and major shirk, or the minor associationalism and the major associationalism. So to summarize our belief in God, it is very simply to single out God alone for our worship and to attribute to Him only His perfect names and attributes, and not to associate anything as a partner with Him.